You're tapped into Japan Journal with Mal Adams, the internet's #1 weekly English language online cybercast from Japan, streaming on GNN, the Global News Network, a division of Totown Communications Company Limited, Japan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special digital stream of Japan Journal. I'm your host, Mal Adams. As we stand on the brink of the 2024 presidential election, our nation faces a critical moment, a moment that will define the future of our democracy. Tonight, we aim to inspire every American, regardless of race, religion, faith, sexual orientation, economic status, or age, to get out and vote in support of the Democratic presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, and her running mate, Tim Walz. Time is short, the stakes are high, and every single vote counts. So let's dive into just why this election matters so much. We begin with the urgency of time. In just a few short weeks, Americans will make a choice that will shape the future of our country. This election isn't just another political contest, it's a battle for the soul of our nation. With Kamala Harris at the helm, we have a chance to preserve and strengthen our democracy, ensuring that it works for all Americans. Her commitment to justice, equality, and opportunity stands in stark contrast to the divisive and dangerous rhetoric of her opponent, Donald Trump. So, joining me tonight, our special guest contributors from Democrats Abroad, in addition to Japan-based scholars, historians, and educators from the U.S. and Japan. Together, we will discuss the significance of this election and how every vote, especially from expatriates here in Japan, can make a difference. Let's start with Angela Fobbs, chairman of the Global Black Caucus of Democrats Abroad, based in Frankfurt, Germany. Angela, welcome to Japan Journal. Gentlemen, could you introduce yourself and describe what you do as the global chair of the Black Caucus, and talk to us about why it's so crucial for American expats to participate in this election, and then share with our listeners what we have to do to vote and support the Get Out the Vote efforts. Welcome, Angela, please.
Thank you, Mal. It's so great to be here with you. I'm the chair of the Global Black Caucus for Democrats Abroad, and we've been around since 2017 and contributed greatly to the elections that have taken place since Trump was elected the first time. And we never want that to happen again, because he is not just dangerous, but I feel like Tim Walz said, he's just weird, and so are the Republicans and all their ideas. The idea that they want to control everyone and what we do and how we act and what we're going to be. Trump spoke about black jobs, but I think black jobs are the president, the vice president, the nice. Department of Defense secretary, and any other job that black people want to have.
Supreme Court of the United States, Supreme Court Justice.
Supreme Court, yeah, that's right, and any other jobs. So he's not just wrong in his interpretation of what America should be, but he's also dangerous. And Americans abroad can make a real big difference in this election. We are the margin of victory. And there's been many races, including in Arizona and Georgia, and also in Florida, that we've made the margin of difference because our votes count just as much as anybody else's. I would highly recommend that everyone that lives abroad go to votefromabroad.org and request your absentee ballot. Please ask for it to come by email so it arrives quickly and on time, because our ballots come out on September 21st. And so that gives you enough time to get your ballot, vote, and get it back. Each state has a different way that they want their ballots back. Some states require you to send it by postal mail, which takes the longest. I think in some countries it's better that have poor mail service. I don't know what the mail service is in Japan, but I imagine it's probably really good. that you can just put it in regular mail. But if you wait until like October, you really need to send it by an express service like DHL or UPS or FedEx or something like that to make sure it gets back on time. And we have all the help that you need. If you have questions, we have voter help. We have everything you need to help you vote. I mean, you have to make your own choices, and I hope your choice is Harris Walz. And
Okay.
be sure and be sure to vote down ballot because we're not going back. And Trump and JD Vance, who I just have to say, I'm originally from Ohio, and I grew up about 20 miles from where JD Vance grew up.
Wow.
And his depiction of what, I mean, maybe his life was really sad and tragic. I don't know. But first of all, Hillbilly Eulogy or whatever the book is called.
So
It depicts his life in Ohio as basically kind of a misery, and that's not what I experienced. And I feel like someone like JD Vance, who despite, I'm not going to put down, if he says his life was like a terrible childhood and all that, I'm not going to say it wasn't. But he went to Yale. He's a US senator, and now the candidate for vice president. He should be a lot happier as a person because he has overcome a lot and he's made a lot out of his life, but he's still a miserable wretch. So it's how you, for me, I didn't go to Yale. I went to university in Ohio. I'm not the vice presidential candidate. I'm not a senator, but somehow my life is infinitely more happier. And I have fonder memories of my life in Ohio than he did. I understand in Ohio, there's a lot of things that have not been great, and mostly because of Republican rule in Ohio. But there's still joy to be found in life, and he should maybe find some. So with that, let me just remind everybody again to go to votefromabroad.org and request your absentee ballot ASAP.
Ohio.
And I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he grew up in Middletown. It's between Cincinnati and Dayton. Not very clever named, but it's in the middle of Cincinnati and Dayton.
That town. We got a lot
So
of
I know all about where he grew up.
State.
And
we've got a lot of Cincinnati African Americans in Tokyo, in Japan, and so I feel like I know a lot about it. Nat Town or whatever the nickname is. Yeah.
The Natty, or for some people might say, just for the people from Cincinnati, who they?
Oh, who they got? Okay.
Who they think gonna beat them Bengals?
Sure, yeah. Who say that? That's like the New Orleans team too, something like that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate it. Give us a word about the Black Caucus. I am freshly familiar with it. So what's the function, overall mission? What's the history of it? And how impactful are they in situations like this?
Well, I joined Democrats Abroad right after the election of Trump. And I started to get involved in a variety of things. And I noticed that there wasn't a Black caucus. So I asked someone who had a lot of experience with Democrats Abroad, why isn't there a Black caucus? And they said, because no one started it. And so I said, okay, then I'll start it. And I started it with a bunch of people that were from around the world who, we started, let me just say first, the Black caucus is for African Americans, but it's also for people of other races, because I don't believe that we can actually solve the problems of racism and sexism and whatever else without everyone who's of goodwill, who wants to help. So it's open. You can join the Black Caucus by going to our website, DemocratsAbroad.com/BC, and just click the join button. And it doesn't matter what your race or ethnicity or religion is. Please join us if you want to live in a better and different world. For me, the idea of starting the Black Caucus I'm not going to say it's changed my life, like, oh, it revolutionized my life, but what it did is it made me see how many people there are out there who want something different, who don't want to live in this sort of racist, nationalist world. So please, everyone, join. We have a lot of events, and we're going to, once we win this election in November, we have an awesome Black History Month planned, because we will have made history in so many ways. And so it's going to be an awesome thing. Right now, we're working on getting out the vote, and I'm going to be appearing on this show and other shows around the world to try to make sure that everyone, not just, especially Black people though, vote, because our votes are very important. We're one of the biggest constituencies in the Democratic Party. And so we need to show up and show out to make sure that Kamala and Tim win, because I feel, and this is, I'm only basing this on my internal feelings, my knowledge of history and other things, but that if Kamala Harris wins this election, it's going to change our world to a point where we're not going to be able to, 10 years from now, we're not going to be able to recognize this old world that we're trying to make America back to. That as far as I'm concerned, the things that a lot of these people, the Heritage Foundation, Trump, all of these sort of right-wing people, they actually have an ahistorical memory of history. And they don't really understand that all the people that were in the 50s or the 40s were working to get to this point. They weren't trying to stay where they were. And that you can't go back, and we're not going back.
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. I wholeheartedly agree and endorse everything you said. And that's why we're doing this series of programs up until Election Day, and hopefully I can maintain this panel to contribute. So feel free to invite us and to support your activities at the Black Caucus. Let me introduce my other guest here, but Angela, we're going to come back to you, and we'll have questions for you from our other panelists. But Sarah Jean Rosito is my colleague and associate. I'm recently involved in Democrats Abroad, Japan, and I was nominated as a delegate to the convention. I lost that election, and then quickly was elected to the platform committee, which Sarah Jean chaired. So Sarah Jean, let me go to you now and talk to us a little bit about what's happening in DA Japan and other countries in the Asia Pacific region from which we are members, right? Is that correct? Talk to us about your activities recently in the build up to the change, the big shift with Biden declining to stand for office and this change. And then give us a little historical perspective with your involvement in the Obama campaign, if you will, please.
Well, that's a lot, but I'll try to pick out just a few key things because I could talk for hours.
Sure.
But one exciting thing I do want to say is that we've seen this new energy. We've seen a little shift in energy and focusing on the future. And I'm so happy Angela brought this up. Like, we're really focused on the future. We've just started, actually, as of yesterday at Asia. I'm the deputy vice chair for Asia Pacific. So we started on Saturdays 2 open hours where new members, new volunteers can come in, partially because it's summer holiday, so not all leaders are around, but we have new people registering to vote and asking what to do. So was really exciting. And I'll be honest with you, even though it was a 2-hour drop-in, I didn't expect people to stay 2 full hours to brainstorm about what are the different things they could do. It was really exciting. So we did talk about different public events. A big discussion in Asia Pacific is, well, let me just start with Japan first. Japan has the 6th highest number of Americans who voting age Americans who live outside the US. And our voting average is just a little bit higher than the global average, despite having excellent mail. But so that means there's a lot of potential. So a big discussion in Japan, as well as with other countries in the Asia Pacific, is how do we reach not just DA members, Democrats abroad members, that is very important, but how do we work with other groups? How do we collaborate? How do we reach out, say, with universities? Because we don't want to take any votes for granted, whether they're young people, whether they're African American, whether they're women. So we were brainstorming these different groups to work with, because it's so important that we really open up and harness this energy. And I think this big emphasis on youth is not just because youth tend to vote less. I teach in 2 universities here both in Tokyo. I live in Shizuoka, but in Tokyo. And the number one thing I hear from American students is, oh, I left that country to escape this stuff, you know, whereas the European and American and Japanese students are always asking about the elections. What do you think is going to happen? That's because I teach about American social movements. I teach about gender. I teach about contemporary social issues. So they're really interested. So I think that making people understand how easy it is to vote and why it matters, and why their voice matters. I think that's what we can do by doing these collaborative events with people who are not involved, who are not really political wonks and not really involved in all of these details. We can show them how to go to vote from abroad, how easy it is to register, to get their ballot, to send. And from Japan, it's very easy to send in your ballot. The mail is very fast. And we have this energy now. And it might seem like it's a short amount of time, less than 90 days to the election. But if we can harness this energy through some, like, so on September 17th, which is voter registration day, 5 days before the ballot drop day, the day by which we should get our ballots. In Asia Pacific, we're having Asia Pacific Islander speaker, who's also the founder of the first gay rights organization in the United States that is run by Asian Pacific Islanders in the US, who's on the High Commission for Human Rights, talk about intersectional views and why our votes matter. So we're doing some guest speakers, we're doing some pub quizzes, which was a big discussion last night, of course, using our social media. I'm harassing all the media people I know because, but we're trying to do some voter registration tables at universities. It's been a bit tricky the last 8 years. 20 years ago, I've been a member of Democrats Abroad for 20 years, since George W. Bush was president. That was my shift to joining DA. Before 2016, we could work with almost any organization in Japan, churches, Japanese women's groups, any groups would say, come in and give a talk. Since 2016, and since January 6th in particular, a lot of organizations, churches are off limits to us now, almost completely.
Why is that? Why is that exactly?
Yeah. Well, I have heard from different people that they were just worried about bringing controversy in. So after January 6th, that image in Japan, for people who are watching this or listening to this outside of Japan, we don't have a lot of violence, we don't have a lot of crime in Japan. Those images of March 6th really freak people out, even more so than Americans. And I would just say, because we're used to crime in the United States. So not wanting to be part of that it's like, oh no, we're just registering people to vote. So I do think it's about building new bridges.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me, speaking of the media, that you were doing some media in the Japanese press. What were they asking? What was their concern? And what did you talk to them about?
So there were three key things, and this article appeared in about 55 local media outlets because it was a wire service. They really wanted to know, interestingly, this is a column, in English it's called New America, Old America. And I guess I'm part of New America. I'm 60 years old, but I'm part of New America. That says something.
You're just a kid, a baby.
Baby. Wanted to know how people were feeling about the shifts. And the title of the English article is actually Time for an American President, ? It's about time. And I talked a lot about how I was in New York when Biden stepped down and Kamala Harris stepped up. And my sister and friends were commenting about how we didn't even focus on, oh, it's about time we have a woman president. We're focusing on her being a multicultural person and her having this interesting background. And the next day, my sister said, no one talked about her being a woman except for our Japanese friends. And we thought that was interesting as New Yorkers. We were focused on the multicultural aspect, being in New York. And so our big focus was, and the journalist was really, is America ready? And his thoughts were, yes, America is ready. Are young people ready? Are women ready? And that was the big focus. And then the other focus was, how do we win? And how do we win is by getting people registered, getting their ballots, getting them to turn those ballots in. And that was really what we talked about, and why it matters for people overseas, right? There's 6.5 million people live overseas. That's more than maybe 30 or 31 states in the United States. That's big. There's more than 100,000 Americans that are eligible to vote in Japan.
Awesome.
What if we got more than 8,000 of them? What if we got 15 or 20,000 of them? We could make a difference.
We win. Yeah, I think
we will win.
Let me transition. Thank you very much. I'll get back to you, Sarah. I want more input from you, particularly about the platforms that I joined when the thing was almost done. I had about 2 days to participate, but let's talk a little bit about those items. But I want to go to Nikki Sekino now, who's my longtime friend, former president of the Japan Afro-American Friendship Association, which is now being renewed and regenerated. We've got new leadership. But Nikki is an old school guy like me. In Japan, we call oyaji, kyodai. He's my young brother. But Nikki, I'm sure you just heard what she said, talking about the Japanese sentiment as she heard it in New York about whether America is ready for a female lady of color to become the most powerful person on the planet. And it's just incredible. What are you hearing in the Japanese media and from Japanese politicians about, first of all, if they think it's going to happen, if it works for them, or is it going to change the dynamic relationship between U.S. government and Japanese government in terms of a female being at the helm? You're a Japanese guy. I know this is a man's world, my brother, but talk to me. What are your sentiments? What are you hearing about that?
Okay, the general sentiment is that expectation for Harris to win is big. Like Japanese media is in favor of Harris and then Walz team, and they are not really with the Trump movements. So they're in favor of this Harris.
Okay,
that's a general in Japanese media. Politicians, they are not talking about American politics. No, at least I have never heard any voices.
Along the same lines, let me ask my young colleague here, Tiffany, particularly young people and particularly young ladies, are you getting any feedback from your Japanese colleagues and friends? By way of introduction, this is Tiffany Rachel, who is an African American, obviously, but born and raised in Japan. So her first language Japanese. She was my co-host at the recent Juneteenth gala that we held in Tokyo. I was the MC, but they assigned her to me. And we said, well, let's do this bilingual because we had over 300 African Americans who come, majority of them came from the base and gathered in Tokyo, but we had plenty of Japanese supporters doing, adhering to African American culture, singing in gospel choirs and all of this. But the interest was great. It was very enthusiastic. But I'm wondering, Tiffany, what can you tell me about the wakamono, the young people of Japan, what you're hearing? Can you share their sentiments based on this brand new incredible phenomenon now?
Yeah, so to add on to like my background, so I would say my fan groups is it's like half Japanese, half Americans, some of them are African Americans, things like that. So among the African Americans, like you said, Sarah Jane, a lot of people are not interested because they moved out here. The reason why they moved out here is to like get away from all of that and everything. So now that in the Democratic Party is switched from Biden to Kamala, I've heard a little more, and the main influences like from, for example, Megan Thee Stallion posting Instagram reel saying hotties for Harris, things like that. And so from that, growing like a little more interest here and there. But I still haven't heard anybody say I'm going to vote this time around. So hopefully maybe through this we'll hear more conversation, but we'll see.
Tiffany, do me a favor right now. 日本語のご覧の皆さん、ちょっと日本語で説明してください。この番組の目標は、若者、特に黒人たち、get out the vote ということは、一言してください。日本人の若者を聞いている人に合わせてください。どうぞ。
ですね、どう思ってるか、この番組の目的としては、11月の、大統領選挙の立候補者が、そのどっちに寄りかかるかっていうのは結構大事な時期になっているっていうことで、なるべくそのアメリカ人の方が、海外に住んでる方々が特に今回の選挙に投票しに行くっていうのが目標なので、どれぐらい大事なのかっていうのは、こういうイベントを通して、重要性を高めていったりとか盛り上げていくっていうのが今回の目的でありまして、その私が、なんで今回参加しているかと言いますと、自分自身がアメリカ人だっていうことと、今回の大統領選挙の立候補者にアフリカ系アメリカ人と、その南アジアの血が入ってる方がいるっていうことで、アフリカ系アメリカ人と、日本にいるっていうことで、その参加しない理由がないっていうところで、今回全力でサポートさせていただきたいっていうところで、しかも自分の周りにもアメリカ人の方が日本に住んでるっていうところで、あんまりその選挙に興味がないっていう方が多かったりするんですけど、今回は結構重要だっていうことと、そのうちらが海外にいるって感じなんですけど、家族がまだアメリカにいるということで、自分自身だけのことを考えずに、アメリカに住んでる家族のことも考えたら、なるべくいい方を選択した方がいいっていうところで、今回参加するのが一番だっていうふうに思ってて、自分もこの場を使っていろいろと発信していきたいなと思ってるので、はい、よろしくお願いします。
Let me open my mic. Thank you very much for that. My camera's changed, I believe. So anyway, that's for our Japanese. I've got a strange camera going on there. Forgive me, but let's proceed. Last but not least in this discussion, and I must call on my good friend, Dr. Reginald Kearney, to, first of all, give us your impressions about the euphoria regarding this phenomenal historical happening. What are your thoughts about it? Put it in historical perspective for us as we have evolved on this journey, this sojourn as African Americans from Reconstruction all the way, as I mentioned earlier, to Jim Crow, to civil rights, to Black Lives Matter, and now to this. What are your sentiments? Please share with us.
Oh, we've talked about this some before. I don't think we have to go back into ancient history to discuss what is important today. In my opinion, great presidents get up in the morning, they go to bed at night thinking about what they can do to improve the lives of ordinary Americans. And great presidents are effective in achieving much of the agenda that they set. And their hope is to move the country toward that more perfect union. Great presidents make great decisions. When convinced that he no longer had the overwhelming support of the Democrat majority, President Biden stepped aside and endorsed his vice president, Kamala Harris. And he chose her, he said, because she would be ready on day one. In my opinion, future historians may rank President Biden even higher than President Franklin Roosevelt and President Lyndon Baines Johnson for what they achieved. He spearheaded the recovery from the COVID pandemic. He withdrew troops from Afghanistan. It wasn't pretty, but it was absolutely necessary. He achieved legislative achievements that many thought were impossible. And he did it even though he had pushback from members of his own party. He played a significant role in reinvigorating, expanding, and strengthening NATO. Trump, when he was president, said he had never heard of NATO before becoming president. He was successful in rallying NATO allies to respond to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He coordinated a unified and robust NATO response, including economic sanctions on Russia. And he put forth a sorely needed plan to reform the Supreme Court of the United States, because, as he said, it is mired in a crisis of ethics. And speaking of the Supreme Court, President Johnson elevated Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court. Biden nominated Ketanji Brown Jackson. Additionally, he made close to 250 other judgeships, installing more non-white federal judges than any president in history, and the majority of them female. He's the only president in history to install more women than men to the federal bench. President Biden's crowning achievement may be his choice of Kamala Harris to be his vice president, and soon to be his successor as Madam President. And because of Biden's mentorship, she too is likely to move the country much further forward in ways that benefit ordinary Americans, preserve our democracy, and the rule of law.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That put it in perspective very well. So I want to thank my guest, Angela, for joining us. We've got your back. Don't hesitate to call on us here at Democrats Abroad Japan. So let this young lady have a word while you're all here. I'd love for you to meet her. We just spoke of her. Latanya.
Hello.
Hey, there she is.
Hello.
Hello. Trying my best to get on here.
I just spoke your name. Everybody.
And then I called.
Yeah, this is my new little sister. She's quite active and She is the one that brought Tiffany and I together, appointed us as the MCs for the most recent Juneteenth thing. So say hi to Sarah Jean, Rosita,
Hello,
Latanya,
everyone.
and Sarah Jean and I are going to be calling up on you to host some local events at your soul food restaurant and the Legacy Lounge.
Please do.
Okay, and then we got our new sister over in Germany who's heading up the Black Caucus there, and so you have a long reach, Latanya. You got friends all over the world. Let's get involved and support her in her effort to get
Hello, how
out the
you
vote.
doing?
That's
Nice to
Angela.
meet you.
She was our
Very
main
nice
guest today.
meet
She
you
was
as
our
well.
main guest today. Latanya is an amazing organizer and a powerful activist, and serves some great soul food in the heart of Tokyo.
Thank
you know?
you.
Yeah,
Thank you
for
so
sure.
much. You're so kind.
So
You're so kind.
thank you for making the show. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're making.
Thank
We're
you,
still
thank
recording,
you.
so I'll be able to edit you in. But
Not a problem.
before we go, just give us one comment about how you're feeling about the historical value of, I call it Black woman power in politics. It's getting ready to do this
Actually,
thing.
it's quite fabulous right now.
Give us your
I
comment
don't
or two,
know. I'm
please.
just really for especially right now with the transition of having potentially having the first female president, and the way things are looking, it's really look like it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
The pour out from the community has been quite amazing. At first, I wasn't quite sure about her running mate Tim, but Tim and her are really a great team. You know, he's really a great advocate for her, and he's someone that I didn't know much about. But the fact of the matter of his connection, you know, with where he comes from, and then at the same time showing respect for the Republican Party for what it was before, it really, I think, is going to be really good for Kamala and really good for what's happening. The respect that she's having, the outpour that people are looking for change. I think that change is just, it's what people are, that hope, I'll say that change of hope, the change of happiness, the change of just seeing someone smile when they go out. And really, as my husband was saying to me the other day, it's that they have a, how can I say, their message is gratitude and gratitude for the people. And so with that being the case, I think what better choice for to have our first female, Black female president. I was just like, I wasn't sure, but the way that it was done, it was the perfect chess piece ever. If that makes sense. It was the perfect chess move.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think right now, we've been so used to hearing a message of hate or power or put down, or I don't know. That's just been what it's been for the last couple of years. And even when President Biden tried to focus on the issues, it, you know, all the time, it still went back to just from both sides, that it was, he's too old, or he's too old, or they're too old, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just refreshing. It's really, what we are seeing right now is such a breath of fresh air that I think that's been much needed in America. And you're seeing the first signs of hope. But one of the things that I will say is that what we've gone through has been happening for years. No matter what positivity or changes that Biden was trying to make, it was still heavily influenced with the negativity of the Trump era, unfortunately.
Right.
And as a result, it's a lot of behavior that we're going to have to unlearn. Unlearn the fact that we looking for of a community of people that's working together. And I see this campaign of hold on just one second.
But the big problem has been the media.
Yes, that's true.
The media has, when for example, the last supposed rally that Trump had, the man, he cannot help himself from lying.
Yes.
And they cover it as a news report. People lying, that's not news.
Yes. There was one that,
And
yeah.
the way they ballyhooed President Biden was seriously offensive. Now they complain he's 81 years old. He's my junior by about 6 years or 5 years.
Mm-mm.
And I think I'm not suffering any kind of mental
Cognitive
problems, and I don't think he is.
I don't think so either.
Take the one example of this man making the arrangements to bring these Americans back home from Russia. There's no way in the world that Donald Trump could have accomplished something like that. He wouldn't even have the desire. He says, let Putin do what Putin wants to do. He's a genius. And for a man who claims to be a stable genius, he is one of the dumbest people I've ever seen in the public American political arena, bar none. And as a historian, I tell you, he will be ranked as the worst president that country has ever had the misfortune to have occupy the Oval Office.
There will definitely be an asterisk by his name.
That's definitely so. Dr. Kearney, one of the things that I will say is you're absolutely right. It's going to come down to the media as well and how they're going to make a change, because just like what you were saying, the event that they had at Mar-a-Lago, and one of the reporters just came back after that and said how much of a shame that it was that every single television station went down there and they watched him and they recorded him, and that was one of the speeches that Vice President was doing, and no one covered that. And then the questions that they were asking him didn't even have anything to do with any of the issues, and they were just like, the way they're gonna challenge her in the future is not. I mean, they didn't even, when he was caught up in lies, he brought up the fact that every single sentence or things that he was saying, almost every single thing was a lie. But none of the reporters had called him on it. It was pretty much, it was just like, yes, kind of a thing. And
same thing they did with the Biden debate.
Yes. So but then he officially apologized, and from that point on, the television, what is it,
MSNBC, yeah.
Yes, they actually went and they played it in full following his apology, because he said all the reporters have to be ashamed of themselves for not even being reporters. And at this moment, the big thing is that a lot of people are going toward comedian reporting, because that's where they feel like they're going to get most of their truth from. But then, like I was saying at the beginning, it's a lot of things that we're going to have to unlearn, because we've been in such a learned negative behavior. And the main thing that I really like about what's happening, this movement that's happening now, is that it's not discussing who's in power. Because I feel like our political system has been who's been in power, which party has been in power for a minute, rather than about the people. And they're literally, the gratitude and the message that's going forth is, thank you, because you didn't have to come here. Thank you for the labor union for helping us to be able to have the chances that we have, because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And I think that message of gratitude, I hope and pray, is going to take them across, because if we have to go back through a whole nother thing,
no, we're not going back.
And then you have to also consider the way the media treated.
Hello.
The way the media treated.
Hi, young man.
Kamala Harris, talking about she wasn't prepared and such nonsense. But this transition from Biden to Harris was ultra smooth.
Very,
It was.
very
It was
smooth
ultra smooth.
and very timely.
And right, and it's because of the way Biden endorsed her very quickly after bowing out.
Right.
The man was a master politician for the time that he has been in office. And now, originally, I thought the governor of Pennsylvania, Shapiro, matter of fact, my sister, one time she agreed with me. We both thought Shapiro should be the pick because I didn't know.
I did too. I endorsed it myself on my.
I didn't know Tim Wall, but
That part.
after I saw him in the in Philadelphia,
Right, when he
I
made that
said,
speech.
she made the right choice. And
And
one of the reasons is because of his background is so dissimilar from her own that he was a high school football coach. And
well, what can I tell you, Doc? It's my Nebraska homeboy. That's the way we roll.
he moved to Minnesota. He moved out of Nebraska.
He grew up in
I grew up in Hackensack, New Jersey.
That's why I like you.
That's ancient history.
Well, you're an old guy.
What can I say? I don't deny
But listen, Latanya, on your point about Trump resenting being vetted for what he says, do you know that the reason he showed up late for the National Association of Black Journalists fateful interview that started his downward trend at the hands of those black women and reporters was because he realized that they were vetting him real time at an application to vet him. And he was like, it ain't gonna happen, I'm not showing up, you know. And so he finally came out and started antagonizing everybody, and the rest is history. He hasn't recovered from that yet.
He could have started that
more
differently.
like the kind of interview that the media ought to be doing.
Absolutely. Well, she came right out of the box and held
Yes,
him
she
to
did.
account for it. Yeah.
Yes, she did. He was
I
like,
didn't know her name before I saw her. She took him to task for what he had said many times.
Right. Sarah Jane,
can't
thank
help
you
it.
very much. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up right here. We'll edit this. Latanya, I'm so happy you were able to attend.
Me too.
I'm
Me
going
too.
to cut you in. Let me just introduce you so that I can properly go to you.
I'm glad I got a chance to meet you before you left.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Latanya
Thanks,
Whitaker,
Latanya.
an associate of ours, Latanya Whitaker. Let me put there you go. And she is the owner of the Soul Food House and the founder of the Legacy Foundation. And Angela and Sarah Jean, she's going to be crucial to us helping to get out the vote because she's an activist and a coordinator. And I'm committed to working and supporting her activity, as is Tiffany, I'm sure, and Nikki as well. So let's call it a night. We're going to do this again, and I hope everybody will join us and participate.
Yep.
Sarah Jean, thank you very much.
Thank
Latanya,
you.
thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much.
evening.
Thank you.
And Angela over there, we got your back as to whatever the Black Caucus wants to do. Don't hesitate to call on us over here at Democrats Abroad Japan.
Definitely.
got
Definitely.
it.
I'm
Well,
so
And-
happy to meet all of you. It's so nice. The positivity in general, but everybody here is so positive, and I'm a little bit overwhelmed by it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's contagious, and that's what we intend to do. We're going to generate this kind of positivity throughout because we're gonna do this. We're gonna make this happen. So I will share this video with all of you for your own platforms. Nikki, and Tiffany, you and I will do some Japanese translation and get it out into the Japanese media. So let us know that we're doing our thing as expat Americans who live abroad. Don't get it twisted. Here we come, and we're going to make the difference. Okay? Thank you, everybody. And
Thank
that's
you.
gonna do it
Have a
for
good night.
Japan
Bye.
Journal.
Bye-bye.
I'm your host,
Bye.
Mal Adams. And stay tuned to this channel because we're coming back with more. Sayonara from Japan.
Sayonara.
Thank you. All right,
Alrighty.
everybody.
Hi.
Thanks so much, everybody. I appreciate you. Love you guys, man.
Alrighty. Okay.
Let's make
Join
this
out
happen.
now.
Nikki, sayonara.
Alrighty.
Mata ne.
Okay, good, good,
Yoroshiku. Okay,
Alright.
dozo. Sorry, de warimasu. In summary, tonight we've heard from experts and passionate advocates about the importance of this election. We've discussed the urgency, the historic significance, and the key issues at stake. Now it's up to you. If you're an American living in Japan or anywhere else abroad, your vote can make a difference. Register with Democrats Abroad, request your ballot, and get involved. And let's stand together so we don't fall apart. And support Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to ensure that democracy prevails. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and our viewers all over the world of the Global News Network on this special digital streaming episode of Japan Journal. I'm your host, Mal Adams, urging you to stay informed, stay engaged, and most of all, and most importantly, get out and vote. So for all of my guests here, thank you very much. I bid you sayonara from Japan. Let's do this, because when we fight, as Kamala says, we win.
We win.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I
I'll be
appreciate
back.
you. All right. And I bid you good day.
You're tapped into Japan Journal with Mal Adams, the internet's #1 weekly English language online cybercast from Japan, streaming on GNN, the Global News Network, a division of Totown Communications Company Limited, Japan.